So the idea that the soul had failed and was mixed with evil and then is liberated by knowledge which comes from within is what Mani taught. Mani was a contemporary of a Greek philosopher named Plotinus, Plotinus. They knew each other. And Plotinus lived and died around the same time. I want to give you Plotinus's definition of religion. He didn't like any of it. Plotinus detested all forms of religion. Though he knew of the existence of God, this is how he described religion. Religion is a barbarous, melodramatic, irrational, immoral, and un-Greek and insanely arrogant superstition. Is this guy good or what? That was his description. Let me give it to you again. Religion is a barbarous, melodramatic, irrational, immoral, totally un-Greek, insanely arrogant superstition. That is what he said. He said thousands of years ago. And his own religion, which he practiced and taught with a calm intensity, was for the quest of the mystical union with good through the exercise of pure intelligence. He died in 270 A.D. His physician was a guy named Eustachius, and he was at Plotinus's bedside when Plotinus died. And his last words to his physician were, try to bring back the God in you to the divine in all. In other words, try to bring that spark which is within you, that light which is within you, to be connected to the light which is universal. So Mani and Plotinus shared together this deep search for a logical explanation of scriptures that portray a heavenly, loving, compassionate God sending his children to live in chaos and violence and so forth and so on. And in other words, to rational thinking people, he said, there has to be an explanation. There has to be a rational explanation. Now, your initial reaction, especially in our culture, is going to be, this is an outrage to say that God is Satan and Satan is God. So first, you have to realize that's not what he said. Plotinus is not saying that God is Satan and Satan is God. What he is saying is that this concept was given to deliberately deceive people, that the way the writing was written was done to intentionally deceive those who were on the outside, to mislead people. And that God is good, and Satan or the devil or darkness is evil. That doesn't change. But the point was, how was this written? So we're not questioning who's good or who's bad, but he's questioning, how was this written? How was this given to you? That, they were writing in a very deceptive, coded way. Then that's the way the people of the East wrote. That's the way they taught. Because they didn't want those who dwelled on the outside to know the truth. Because if a person dwells on the outside and knows the truth, then because of the power of the carnal mind, they corrupt the truth. And religion is a perfect example of it. It becomes a money thing, a control thing, when it should be just the opposite. And so then the truth was only given to those who were mystically aligned with the power. In other words, those who are within. Those who have purged out the carnal mind by separating from the thoughts receive the truth. The other people were completely and totally deceived and misled as to what life was about. See, you don't have, first of all, you don't have anybody by the name of Satan. You don't have anybody by the name of the devil. These things don't exist. We're talking about powers that afflict both of us, all of us. But, we think about this. Ancient writers tricked us. I mean, people who wrote the Bible would deceive us deliberately. We are deceived deliberately when we're trying. Let me. If you have the Bible, we're going to do a little bit, if you can, if you have one of these, because I'd like you to see it. So we're going to do a little bit of running around this here, but I just want you to see what we're talking about here, and why this Mani this guy from Persia looked at this and you know, after he had this vision, he was trying to, you know, make some sense of this, of what life is about. I mean, little children, terrible things happen to little children. I mean, you know, we've all heard about this case of this little girl, you know, the John Benet Ramsey kid out in Colorado. It's a beautiful little girl dancing around, a little blonde curl, and it comes with savage death. How is that possible? And the cruelty that's inflicted on the children and the elderly, and you look in different countries where people are, you know, with dogs and they're scrapping through pots or, you know, washing out of, I mean, you know, a good number of people in the world just live in terrible poverty and filth and all of these terrible things. I mean, what in the world is this? Why should this be? So then you say, well, could it be, like he said, that there was an intent here to deliberately hide the truth so that the truth was not corrupted by these people who have corrupted so much else? Do those who are really the God people deliberately deceive? Let me show you something. If you have page 78 in this Bible, and you're looking at Matthew chapter 13, and you look at verse 10, and they ask Jesus, and they say, why the heck don't you say what you mean? Why do you talk in parables? Why are you talking in riddles all the time? Page 789. That's what I said. I said 789. You jump to conclusion. Absolutely. Oh, 789. That's why I said 789. Matthew chapter 13, verse 10. So they're asking Jesus, why don't you say what you mean? Why are you talking in riddles? And he says in Matthew 13:11, because it is given to you to know the mysteries of the kingdom, but to them it isn't given. In other words, I know that because of your movement within, that you understand, and that what I will give to you, you will use for the right reason, but I don't want them to know. So he says, look in Matthew 13:12, for whoever has, to him shall be given, and he'll have more, but whoever has not, from him shall be taken away what little he has. Therefore I speak to them in parables, 13:13, because they seeing see not, and hearing they hear not, neither do they understand. In other words, if you have divine knowledge, you'll receive. But if you don't, what little understanding you do have, you'll lose. So there's a deliberate attempt. In other words, the whole New Testament, according to the Jesus here, is a riddle and a code to deceive people who are on the outside. Look at Matthew 13:14. In them is fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah, who said, by hearing you shall hear and shall not understand, and seeing you shall see and shall not perceive. And everybody's out there. Everybody's out there in every church that we've got, and nobody's ever questioned this. This is a deliberate attempt to deceive.